All right, Chad, Brendel, Tim Adams, BearcatJournal.com. We are here at the Shakely Athletic Center, and Tim, Victory Bell Week. Ding ding, as Andre Rebels once famously said on Bearcat Journal. Miami, an improved team. Of course, it would be hard not to be improved over what they showed offensively last year, where we were reminded today they had 1 yard of offense in the second half. Can't even say it without laughing. What do you see from this Miami team? You got to watch them against Michigan on the television last weekend. What do you see improvement-wise from them, and what are they going to do that's going to give Cincinnati some issues?
Well, I didn't see a lot of it, but I do know one thing. I think they know what they want to do offensively, which last year they didn't seem to know what they wanted to do. And we do know that Chuck Martin has been a head coach before, and he's won some national championships at lower levels. So I think their overall talent has gone up. They got 4 nice not transfers, but unusual additions. They got Andrew Hendricks at quarterback, Alex Welch, who I'm not sure is going to be able to play. We're hearing he may have gotten injured last week. Low Wood from Notre Dame, the trifecta from Notre Dame. And then Quentin Rollins was a nice addition for him. Basketball player who's playing cornerback. And I think he leads them in interceptions with 2. So that's up their overall talent level, I think. And I think they've got a coaching staff that knows what their identity is. And so I think they'll be a lot better. And so far, even though they're on 3, in 19 straight losses, they look better than last year.
Now, are you comfortable with saying Gunnar Kiel's going to have a better day than he had in his debut? That has to be, you've watched a lot of Cincinnati football. That has to be one of the most, if not the most impressive debut you've ever seen for a Bearcat.
And it started right from the get-go. I mean, I thought that with him being new and hadn't played since 2011, they'd sort of dink and dunk him. But what happened was Toledo was in a coverage where they thought they could go over the top, and they did. And it just never seemed to slow down. I mean, they just kept pouring it on, and Gunnar had as good of a first half as I think we've ever seen a quarterback at Cincinnati have in his initial play.
And honestly, one of the best halves of football a quarterback has ever played at Cincinnati.
Absolutely.
So he set the bar high.
Yeah, if you're betting the over and under, I'm going on the under on this one, even though I don't think Miami is as good as Toledo, but it's going to be hard for him to replicate what he did last Friday night.
But either way, I mean, you have to be impressed with the way that he was poised, the way that he ran the offense, the way that he commanded the offense, found different guys, the touchdown pass to 6 different receivers. And we talked about the depth and the talent in this wide receiver group. You throw a touchdown pass to 6 different guys, you're putting that on display a little bit, and your guy didn't even get one. He got caught from behind, Johnny Holt.
Yeah, that was amazing. I think somebody got his jersey and kind of got his gait off a little bit, and he wasn't able to take it all the way. And he kind of pounded the ground because he doesn't expect to get caught from behind. But yeah, it's 6 different guys, which was great for this receiving core. And, for years I've been hearing that Cincinnati, with the spread offenses that they've had with Butch and then with Brian Kelly, that they're going to use 6, 7 guys. This was the first time I actually did see them go 7 and even I think 8 deep into their receiving core when it mattered. So they've got a lot of guys that when your cornerbacks are out there all the time and you're running people deep all the time, they're going to get a little bit gassed. And like Tommy told me the other day, we just out-receivered them because you keep running those fresh legs out there, and you got guys with different abilities, and they will.
What you don't see is you don't see cornerbacks come off the field. If, say, Mikhail McKay runs a go route, runs 50 yards down the field, he just comes to the sideline.
Right.
Somebody else goes in for him. The cornerback's got to go all the way back to the line of scrimmage, line up, and get ready to do it again. So that is an interesting advantage that this group has.
Yeah, then line up with Chris Moore, Johnny Holt, and they have to keep him in front of them. Yeah, so it's tough.
Defensively, obviously a little concern after the Toledo game. You've watched these guys a lot through training camp. How much do you think being that first game where it was live was part of the problem, and how much do you think they've just got some issues they need to fix on defense?
I think it was a lot of their problems. That was the fact that they didn't do a lot of tackling. They had to wait 3 weeks to get onto the field, and that's why you want, and so many teams schedule sort of a week or 2 in the beginning to be able to have a chance to kind of work on those things. Today I saw a lot of tackling work done by the defensive backs. And I know that Coach Tuberville was disappointed in the play of the defensive backs. I think Howard Wilder probably had his worst half or game since he's been here.
A couple guys get behind him, miss some plays coming up in support.
Right. Although number 9 for them, Antonio Brown, I think his name was, he's a good player now.
Yeah.
A big guy and can run well and was recruited by a lot of FBS high-level schools. But I think that we'll see this defense bounce back and be a lot better, I think. We certainly hope so, because they can't miss that many tackles and beat somebody good.
Well, in Chuck Martin offense, he wants to run. They haven't been very good at running.
No.
They've really struggled to run the ball, but he wants to run to set up play action. So it's critical for the Cincinnati defense to step up in this game, make sure that they don't get the running game going so that they can focus on keeping everybody in front of them in the passing game.
Yeah, and Cincinnati didn't do a good job stopping the running, but they're not going to face a runner like Kareem Hunt, and they're not going to face an offensive line like Toledo's. But you do want, I think the game plan is you want to stop the run and see if Andrew Hendricks, who was primarily a running quarterback at Notre Dame, if he can beat you with his arm. And I know Notre Dame has some receivers that can hurt you. Can that line protect them? It was disappointing on the edge a little bit. Silverberry Muhan disappeared a little bit. Terrell Hartsfeld played well, but I think most fans looked at that Toledo game and said, after seeing what Missouri did with them on the edge, thought Cincinnati would do the same thing. But Cincinnati got 3 sacks. One of them came late with Chris Burton. So they really didn't put a lot of pressure on Woodside. They probably want to put a lot more pressure on Andrew Hendricks on Saturday.
Absolutely. Anything else sticking out for you? And a great story that you put up on Wednesday on Dominic Maniello getting his first start as a Cincinnati Bearcat. Anything else you want to touch on for the Battle of the Victory Bell?
Well,
I know you had something you wanted to do a story on. You said you're going to put it on the message board. We might be able to touch on it a little bit here if you want.
Well, you've got an interesting situation there, because you've got 5 former Notre Dame players and a former Notre Dame offensive coordinator that are going to be on that field on Saturday. So most guys who are competitors, if you play against your old teammates, you're going to want to win. And this particular head coach at Miami was the guy that was in control of that offense when Gunnar Kiel decided to leave. Charlie Molnar, who left Notre Dame to take the head job at UMass, was the offensive coordinator when Gunnar went to Notre Dame. So we might be able, as the joke goes by, we might be able to draw some conclusions, and I think there is maybe a feeling of disrespect by Gunnar there. That Everett Golston was the guy, and then they recruited the kid out of the Dayton area as another dual threat quarterback. But Gunnar maybe wasn't what that Chuck Martin really wanted, and if I'm Gunnar, I'm gunning for Chuck Martin to show him he was wrong.
And Gunnar brought up the disrespect in his press conference. That he was trying to silence the critics. And were you surprised that he brought that to the forefront?
No, because he's taken such a beating on so many levels, and some of it isn't even, I think, fair. The decommit from Indiana, his brother Dusty had played there, and Dusty left the program altogether and actually committed to another coach, not to Kevin Wilson. So when your brother doesn't want to play for a head coach, there's a good chance the younger brother isn't going to want to play for
the LSU thing was weird.
It was a little bit strange, but I think when you're talking about a kid in a small town.
I love Clifton.
As the ambulance goes by. You're talking about a kid in a small town. They don't produce a lot of really big-time recruits. And, a lot of these people roll out the red carpet. And, it can be very, very...
Les Miles comes in and eats the grass out of your front yard.
Yeah, he's a little different, too. But, I think he kind of got caught up in the moment, and then Notre Dame has always been a part of the Kiel family, and he ended up at Notre Dame. But he's where he wants to be. He's in a good spot now, Gunnar is, and I think Bearcat fans are real happy right now.
I think he'd like to do to Chuck Martin what Jameis Winston jumped on a table and yelled. That's a different story.
But before we quit though, we got to talk a little bit about special teams. I thought overall they were a little bit better. And if you noticed down there the other day, there definitely is a wind down at that stadium that doesn't exist a lot of times here. We watched the kickers have no trouble putting it into the west end zone, but really struggle to get it to the goal line on the east end zone. And, the young kid, Andrew Gantz, missed the extra point, hit the upright. But I thought overall for a young guy going out there the first time, he kicked a pressure kick down there that put him up by 10, the 34, 36-yarder. And I thought Tracy did a good job for a guy that had...
You pin a couple down inside the 5.
And both punters punted fairly well today. Each of them had one stinker out of their bunch of maybe 5, but each of them had a good boomer right around 60 yards, a nice height on many of them. Their directional kicks were good. So I think those two guys, Lloyd and Geraci, are really, the competition is really making them a little bit better, I think, right now.
All right, that's going to wrap it up. Tim, what do you got a prediction for the Victory Bell? Does it stay here?
Oh yeah.
In Clifton another year?
Yeah, I mean, I thought what happened last year was a fluke. That game was even close. It was probably one of the worst college football games I've ever seen.
Well, as was mentioned in a conversation we had here today, if that game was still played right now, if they had just continued it for 363 days or whatever, Miami still would not have scored an offensive touchdown.
You're just killing those Red Hawk fans. But, I think Cincinnati's going to win. I think we're going to see better defense, and I'm hoping for a 3 or 4 touchdown difference.
I've been reading Bix a lot, so
That's your first mistake.
He's Tim Adams. I'm Chad Brendel. Bearcat Journal. We'll see you on Saturday night. Homecoming, Paul Brown Stadium, as the Bearcats take on the Red Hawks.